the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Mayor Nicholson, Vice Mayor Sanger,
Here.
Councilmember Durst,
Here.
Councilmember Espinoza,
Here.
Councilmember Martinez,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. We're going to move on to citizens' participation. This is a public comment period. For the public comment, you have about 5 minutes. If anybody has anything that they would like to bring up. Mr. Rutherford? When you do come up, make sure you sign in so we know who you are.
I won't know who I am if I don't use my glass. Pro Tem Mayor Sanger, Council, good evening. I was approached by the Rawlins Booster Club, and they had a desire to somewhat reinstate the old bonfire that they used to do for the spirit stick. In the old days, the classes would get together. They had 4 individual piles, and the class with the biggest pile got the award for having the most work. Generally, the seniors won because they had more resources. Some of them had access to semi-trucks. Well, it escalated. So then the piles were pushed together, and it was a large bonfire. So I had very large reservations when they approached me. However, I replied and I said, we've had problems with this in the past. What's your plan? They put together a good plan. This is a very scaled down event compared to what it was in the future. The anticipated problems will be minimal. We support the event, and we have several members of the Booster Club here tonight. And if one of you would like to come up and kind of tell them what your plan is.
You get one, you get all of them. I don't know if it's safe to do that. So this is the Booster Club board members all here, and then of course we have a parent here as well. We are a club that is supportive of all activities at Rawlins High School. And so not just sports, we support every activity, club, everything at Rawlins High School, and we do a very good job at it. And this great mother here brought it to our attention that it would be really cool to go back to the bonfire days like we used to do. We have come up with a plan to actually do the bonfire on a Wednesday. Homecoming is actually on Friday. And so what we thought is we could do Wednesday where all activities, athletics, everybody can be involved in this. And then on Friday we'll have our normal homecoming, which as you know is very busy. And so we have, like John said, very smaller scale, safe environment just to boost morale and bring everybody together again to support the Rawlins Outlaws. And so we're hoping you'll support us on this. Do you have any questions?
When you say smaller scale, what does
Don't
that...
judge us. We're hoping to have a basic bonfire, and I believe over on the, what lot is that? It's the, help me.
What I was told from maintenance, it was going to be west of the school in that lot.
Where the old school was at.
Oh.
And so it's not going to be like all night long or hours or anything like that. We're looking at a 7:30. We'll have the cheerleaders doing, you know, the basic pump us up, get ready, tailgate kind of thing with food vendors. It'll be a family event, not just high school. It's going to be a family event. Yep. And so it's not, we feel like we've taken every precaution to make sure it's safe, fun, family event, and the kids can see what this looks like, something that we got to see growing up, but they have not. They haven't had it for years, and I think they're going to be pretty impressed with it.
Steve, it's going to be in a space smaller than an 8 by 8. And then we'll have somebody there on site before the woods even put there, so we can make sure nobody's planting stuff.
Yep.
We had.
I didn't think about that.
We did. So that's what ended it the last time, because it really truly got out of control. They've done a great job in putting a plan together, and we'll keep it regulated. It'll be safe.
Okay, and what do you need from us? Not
Your-
matches.
Your approval to do it, and then, of course, we'll want you to come. So, yeah, your approval, and if you'll show up, see what it looks like, and then,
We're all good?
Yeah, is this a motion or just a nodding?
Well, we were told that bonfires are banned within city limits. So we need to do that.
Are they by ordinance?
There are restrictions, and it's through the fire code and through a municipal code for burning of refuse. I don't think that this is categorized as refuse, but it is a recreation. So this is a little bit larger in scale, so it really should have your.
Okay, is there anything we need to do here, do you think?
Is this just a quick motion, or do we need?
Well, because it come up in citizen participation, you'd have to amend the agenda to approve the
Okay.
bonfire. And when we initially talked about this, we just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of this event, that we were supporting the fire chief. We had a long conversation about it. I guess I'll go out on a limb and say, unless there was a staunch objection to doing this, I think it was more of an informational. I feel confident in our fire chief and the booster club that they've taken the recommendations of Chief Rutherford, and this will be a safe event with our staff there. I would be comfortable not taking any action on it, but you're the elected body, so I'd leave it up to you. But if you are going to, you have to amend the agenda, put it under new business, and go forward.
Ms. Linton?
I have one question. Does the ordinance allow the fire chief just to make that decision? If it does, then I'm all for it.
It basically does, because the fire chief is the authority having jurisdiction over the International Fire Code.
Okay, thank
And
you.
this is a code within the fire code. It's not a city ordinance, so to speak. It's a requirement in the fire code, if I'm correct, Mr. Rutherford.
That is correct.
And so under the fire chief's purview of the International Fire Code, he can make that decision.
It's just, I don't disagree with anything that's been stated. However, if you are going to treat those that follow differently, you should amend your agenda and add it under new business, just for that purpose, if you want to do uniformity. But if the council is content with parties coming to you under public participation, advising you of their plans, and unless you have a stern objection, it's completely up to the governing body.
I'd also add, in the future, how this process probably should have went is we probably should have just treated it as like an application process with our advance application. It would have happened in an internal review, and this type of thing would have never came here. But because of our time frame that we were in, it was like this would be the easiest way to take care of it in a short amount of time. But in the future, I don't think that when they do this next year, because it's going to be such a huge success and the kids are going to want it next year, we would get them an event application packet. They would fill it out. It would be reviewed by staff on our weekly meeting, and then we would go ahead and take care of it internally. It would be something that would rise to this occasion for your approval.
This Wednesday is tomorrow Wednesday? Next Wednesday?
Next
week
Wednesday.
away?
yeah.
Okay, Mayor, Council, that is correct. It was late to come to my attention, and of course I had questions. I reached out to the maintenance department of the school and made sure that the staff at the school was on board. And I'm not insinuating that you didn't do that, but I want to make sure that we were all on the same page. I asked them to submit a written plan, they did, so that gobbled up some time, and that's why we didn't go through the application process.
So if we're all comfortable here, do we need the process of changing the agenda to do this, or we're just good with letting them go ahead?
I just had a question. When was the last one? Because I think it happened when I was in high school.
It's been
It was a long
2006?
So it's your fault.
No, I wasn't know what happened.
I started as paid staff in 1997, and it was right
And then that
around
way
there,
it's at 48,
99.
Yeah.
We'll do it that way.
We had them in when I first started high school, and then they stopped in there.
Yeah, it was getting out of hand.
Okay, so we're going to formally amend our agenda, and then we'll vote on it and go from there. Mr. DeBari?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to amend our agenda to include a bonfire for the Rawlins Outlaws, a booster club, an outlaw day.
Second?
Point of order. I'm sorry to
Ms.
do
Linda?
this.
Thank you.
Shouldn't we do that under when we approve the agenda?
Yes.
Rather
I
than
suppose.
do it now, then we can just keep it really clean and put it under approval of agenda, and we do it at that time.
Sure.
Thank you.
We can do it then.
We'll get through this.
Thank
We'll
you.
struggle on
You'll
that.
get your fire.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Council, thank you for your latitude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing that back. That's one of those old school things that kind of gets lost.
That's it.
So fun.
We're still in the public comment period. Does anyone else have a public comment?
Okay, I'm Lee Nation. Glad to see you all.
Who are you?
Sign in late. You'll have to sign in.
Oh, okay, I'm doing fine. Thank you. Just a moment. Okay, so I wrote a tiny blurb. I have lived in Rawlins for 41 years. I have lived on South Side the entire time. I have gone through the underpass innumerable, uncountable times. I am used to just zipping through, except when you get a few very large vehicles. So then I have the prudence enough to wait. So I would be very interested, and I'll just read the rest of this to you, okay? So as it is now too late to consider a simple striping of the underpass on Washington Street, I would like to request, and I will give this to Marla so she can put it on record, that next spring, when plans and budgeting are being considered, that the city of Rawlins stripe the underpass in time for our tourist season. In terms of safety of drivers of all types, I know it will be important to have the underpass striped. It saves a lot of people. I had the misfortune, since I'm so used to doing this, and I was not speeding when I went through. However, the gentleman coming the other way was a bit freaked out by my coming at the same time, and he moved over too far to his right and wiped out his mirror. So, and that's a simple thing. It's a pain in the butt. I have to get it fixed and to go, oh my God. But maybe, and the division in the road is very visual. You can see it easily, but to have that striped would be very nice. A couple of years ago, I asked Leroy if they could stripe it, and they did, which was great. Now, granted, it doesn't last a long time, but at least for the time that it lasted, people could look and go, oh yeah, you know, I need to move over, I'm too far over. So, and in addition to this, I would like to thank the city crews for all the good work they have accomplished on the underpass this last month. It was much needed, and it's much appreciated, and you can actually see when you go through that now. And it's smooth, at least on the north side, which is pretty nice. So that just concludes my comments, and I guess I will just give this to Marla, or Sherry, either one. But if this could be brought up perhaps next spring when you're looking at budgets and what to do, and I'll probably appear back again and go, get the striping on the underpass. Okay? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I know about a month ago I had asked about increasing police trust. Many of you asked for more time. I don't want it to fall off your radar. I'd like to see some kind of action before January. I want you to know that They are still giving citations, and when asked why, they're told it's by order of the city manager in order to blame and shame the city council. Something that used to be compliant-driven now seems to be revenge-driven. When it comes to even today, like your proclamation against domestic violence abuse, it's nice to see that proclamation in conjunction with action. The lady who was stopped by an off-duty police officer and harassed, if she's being beaten by her husband, how much do you think she's going to trust a police officer to call and give her help? I really think it's important that we have trust in our police. The second thing I like to talk about is the road on Daly. I drive on it to go home. I don't know if this is another case of bad scheduling. Let's asphalt it this year and rip it all up the next year to fix the pipes. Somebody said it was ripped up because there were cracks in it. So why didn't we schedule it to rip it up one day and the next day fix it? How long are we going to have muddy, bumpy roads? Just a question on the scheduling. Also on the cost, if it was a problem with the asphalt, is that guaranteed by who did the job? Or are we going to have to pay extra to have it all covered? Third and final note on the Title VIII, if it is passed tonight, I would suggest strongly that you alert all the businesses about the change to the locked container and not just give them citations. Might be nice to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If there's no one else, I'm going to move on to proclamation of domestic violence awareness. This is the mayoral proclamation, joined together to prevent domestic violence. Whereas domestic violence in rural communities exists as a hidden, silent, and often unrecognized reality that may not be reported to authorities or is underreported, and whereas we need to challenge the assumptions made about domestic violence, become proactive in preventing domestic violence, and hold offenders accountable, and whereas Carbon County Cove and other agencies, organizations, and state coalitions across Wyoming and the nation are committed to preventing domestic violence by promoting prevention awareness campaigns, educating the community, and advocating for victims' rights. Now, therefore, I, Steve Sanger, Mayor Pro Tem of Rawlins, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2019 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. In Rawlins, Wyoming, I urge all citizens to join together to prevent domestic violence. And there we go. Moving on to the minutes, approval of the minutes from September 17th, 2019, regular meeting. Motion? Mr. Aaron?
Move to approve the October 1, 2019 City Council agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Why is this? All right, there we go. I move to approve the City Council regular meeting minutes of September 17, 2019 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Clerk will open online voting.
Marla, can I change my vote? God, I wasn't.
Oh, yes, you can. So do you want to do abstain?
Yes, please, thank you.
And then you're going to say that
Online voting is closed, and the motion passes with 5 yeas and 1 abstain.
Thank you. Moving on to correspondence, reports, and information. We have nothing underneath that, so we'll be moving on to the agenda and the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the amendment by adding under new business approval of the bonfire on Wednesday, October 9th, 2019 for Rawlins High School Outlaw Week.
Mr. Durst. Seconded. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion. Clerk will open online voting.
Online voting is closed and the motion passes with 5 yeas. Oh, 6, sorry.
Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business. We're in third and final reading, amending Rawlins Municipal Code, Title 8, Health and Safety. There it is. Need a motion? Aaron?
I have a two-part motion. I move to approve an ordinance amending Title 8 on third and final reading and waive reading of the ordinance with the following amendments included. Amendment number 1 on section 8.08.120. The last sentence says, however, no tree within the street or alley rights of way shall be cut or removed without the express written consent of the city. So my amendment is to just strike that sentence from the ordinance.
Mayor, I'll second his motion.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I would like to know why the amendment.
Because, well, first of all, this says, no tree within street or alley rights of way shall be cut or removed without the express written consent of the city. I don't understand, my first thing is I don't understand why anybody would be going to the city to ask permission to cut their own tree down.
Okay.
I mean, that's the first part of that. And then a discussion, it sounds like it's not something that's even being done anyway. And so I just for keeping things clean, I would like to remove that.
Mr. Lewis?
Pro Tem Mayor Steve Sanger, Aaron, I'm just kind of wondering if someone wanted to cut down a tree and they didn't have the proper way of dropping the tree, what if it landed up on somebody's house or something?
Well, but that would be an entirely different ordinance. This is just stating that people have to clean the right of way. And so I don't think that the city can demand a letter of approval to do that. Now, if we want to go into the proper removal, then that's to me, that's a different conversation and a different ordinance. It would have to do with proper, because this has nothing to do with how it's removed, right? This doesn't say you will hire a professional company. It doesn't say anything about safety or concerns. It just says you will clean your alleyway or your right of way.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I agree with what Louis is saying, or Councilman Espinoza was saying, that I guess my thinking is that, do we have an ordinance now on the books that says that they have to come to the city to remove a tree? So then shouldn't we be maybe putting this ordinance together and encompassing the statements that Louis made about the tree? I think that'd be the easier way.
Let me catch up a second here, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So I was asked by Councilman Durst to research some of these questions before tonight. I'd sent out some stuff and included in the board docs for you on what I found. Some of the questions were, was this a requirement of Tree City USA? I went through all the ordinances. I could not find where anything in the Tree City USA program required us to give written permission to have a tree removed. As far as the responsibility to take care of the trees, it's spelled out really clearly in 12.36100. 12.36100 states, any tree extending over a public street, alley, or highway shall be trimmed by the property owner on which the tree trunk is located or his authorized agent, so as to provide a clear height above the street, alley, or highway of not less than 14 feet. Section B says, any tree extending over a public sidewalk shall be trimmed above the property owner so as to provide a clear height above the sidewalk of not less than 8 feet. Section C, the property owner of any tree which extends over a public street, alley, highway, or sidewalk shall remove any and all dead branches from the tree which, if dislodged, are likely to fall upon the public street, alley, highway, or sidewalk. And, excuse me. And then D, in the event that a property owner fails to meet the requirements of this section, then the city may issue a written notice of violation to the property owner, giving 15 days to correct the violation. If the violation is not corrected within the given period of time, then the city has the option of correcting the violation at the property owner's expense. So now, some of the other things I talked about and some of the issues in the older part of town, up around Mountain View area, and a lot of that is some of the early planning designs for the community had, some people call them planning sections, some people refer to them as boulevards. And that's the section that would be from behind the curve, and then you kind of have this void, and then you have a sidewalk. And that varies from different locations in the older part of town here. I mean, actually all the way down First Street and some of the areas on the older part of town there. Sometimes you only have about a 3-foot boulevard. Some other places you have 5-foot. And so in the past, I mean, we've worked with people, if it's, is that the utility right-of-way? Is that a public right-of-way? And when there's questions, people usually contact us. We work with them and figure it out or provide some assistance. And the rest of the areas of town are pretty clear-cut. As far as the south side part of town is pretty clear-cut, pretty clearly defined from where the sidewalk is and the roadway. Most of Highland Hills is that way. El Rancho is pretty much that way. Some of the issues we do have in the older part of town, that right-of-way can change block to block. And if you drive some of those areas, you can see that where this block, there's this much space, 3 feet. The next one, there's 5-foot space back to the sidewalk. So the way it's been handled in those areas, if it's a question, we talk about it with the property owner, and we work those out on a case-by-case basis. But as far as my research could go back, I couldn't find where we've ever given written authorization to a property owner to remove a tree off their property. I just couldn't find anything that it exists, and I only looked back about 10 years. I didn't go back any further than that. I thought, well, if it hasn't happened in then, it's probably a moot point. But I don't know if that clarifies your concerns. I will say that the city of Casper has been working on an ordinance because they've had some issues apparently with uncertified people dropping trees, and they're looking at requiring some sort of licensing for people falling trees, even on private property, because they've had some issues. Now, the only other thing that I could think of in the history of going back as long as I've been around here, why the city might have wanted to put that in there, this is just speculation on my part. We had a lot of people going around topping trees, which is the practice of just whacking off the tops and leaving the bottom. It's really harmful to the trees. We had some people employing, maybe not the most certified person, and we were having some issues with, and the whole purpose of the Tree City USA was the not only the beautification, but the healthiness of the trees in this high desert that we live in. So that's a speculation on why they might have wanted to require a written permission, but to my knowledge, we've never done that, and I would agree that that's probably language that could be removed out of that section.
So what you're saying is you don't really think we need to have anybody report when they're going to trim these trees, or?
On their own property. I mean, if somebody wants to cut down an apple tree in their backyard, I don't think.
I understand that part, but I'm talking about in the right-of-way, Scott, like on 12th Street, 13th.
We would hope that they would be responsible and request that, hey, we're going to drop a tree on the roadway, and they would ask the city to close the street to safely do that, or they'd be hired. I mean, we're pretty fortunate here lately. We've had 2 really reputable tree trimming companies that have been doing a lot of work in the city that seem to cooperate with us. They'll come in and let us know, hey, we need to close this street to drop this big tree. I'm not going to say that tomorrow somebody isn't going to go drop a tree on a car on 11th Street. That could happen tomorrow just as easy as we're standing here talking that. But, I mean, having an extra layer of enforcement on that part for somebody to maintain a tree on their property, I don't know if that makes sense. And
I'm not really concerned about the maintaining of it or the branches. I'm talking about if somebody decides that they want to use that island for something else and they want to cut cut the tree down and,
Yeah.
should they have to come before the city and get a permit? No?
You know, that's an interesting concept, Barry, because I think, you know, as moving forward, as we continue to talk about RV parking and where these things are going to go, I think you're probably going to see that, where people have these boulevards and say, hey, I'd rather have a place to park my camper than have a tree out front. And it's within their property, you know, I mean, I think that's a whole nother conversation on how the city wants to regulate the trees in the community, but if it's on their own property, whether it's a utility right-of-way or just a public thoroughfare right-of-way, they have that right to remove that tree. I don't know that we really need to have a process for them to do that. But I mean, it'd be a whole different ballgame if you want to keep those trees and you don't want to allow that behavior, then you'd have to probably come up with some other.
I guess if they have to block the street to get, tear it down, I guess they'd have to come before the city and let them know that
Usually,
the street is blocked.
yeah, usually what we do with all the other utility closures is they notify Public Works. We have and we have an internal process, not necessarily coming in front of the council. It'd be, hey, we're going to do some utility work on 9th Street. We're going to have the street blocked. They let Public Works know. We request ahead of time. We have a form that people fill out. And then we notify emergency services and everybody else. So it kind of gets an internal notification. The ambulance gets notified, the sheriff's department gets notified, hey, this street's going to be closed from this time to this time for utility work or drop a tree or whatever. So
Pretty much covers it then, I think.
I think so. I mean, you know, the coordination of getting them closed, but like I say, somebody could drop a tree tomorrow, but I think that's their responsibility. And hopefully they take precautions against that. But I would agree that that language is probably not needed at this time. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other comments? No? Good. Clerk will open online voting.
So can I clarify the motion, please?
Yes.
Okay. So I took the liberty of going in and rewriting it, and it's moved to approve on third and final reading, an ordinance amending Rawlins Municipal Code Title 8 Health and Safety with an amendment number 1, strike the last sentence from section 808120A.
I don't have A, I just have 808.110.
Oh, 110.
I don't have an A, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I
think this
just
is
wanted to make
copy
sure I got the correct language.
It's in that and it's in that paragraph
Alley,
for sure.
public utility easements, public thoroughfares, right-of-way, and cleanup responsibility.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay, I'll correct that. So I'm gonna save this, and now we can vote.
Okay.
It is actually, Marla, it's 120A.
It is one.
Is there an A? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it is 808.120, section A, and it would be striking, however, no tree within street or alley rights of way shall be cut or removed without the express written consent of the city.
Okay,
So that last sentence on that one would be stricken.
Thank you.
okay, I'm saving the motion. I'm gonna send you notice, and then you can do your magic. Okay.
It's not reading correct.
So what you sent to us is third and final reading, amending Rawlins Municipal Code Title 8 Health and Safety, and then it's just moved to approve on third reading and final reading.
So if you refresh, you should get the new language.
Alrighty.
Okay.
So I guess mine says the same thing. It doesn't specify it's an amendment.
Right.
So, let me see, yeah. Municipal, okay. So we're gonna see, live and learn, we're learning.
It's okay.
I'm gonna go back down to. Okay, so now we have it, so with the motion Durst, Martina seconded it. How about now? Perfect.
Yeah.
Success.
Everybody have them?
Okay, online voting is closed and the motion passes with 6 yeas.
Okay, so now we're gonna do.
Okay, so now I read the
second-
second part of the motion, correct?
so-
Okay, for the second part of the motion,
Amendment.
amendment, and then I reread the whole thing again, correct? I move to approve an ordinance amending Title 8 on third and final reading and waive reading of the ordinance with the following amendment number 2 to be included, which would be Section 8.08.320, hauler records filed with the city clerk. The current language says, hauler shall provide to the city clerk before the 10th of each month a list of customers, size of containers for that customer, and frequency of pickup in alphanumerical order. My amendment would be to strike a list of customers, so that the only information being reported is the size of the container and the frequency of pickup.
Sorry.
For the purpose of discussion, I would second that.
Thank you. Questions? Anybody here? I have one. Amy, in our flow control ordinance, is there anything that specifies that we have to have a list of names plus the size of the container plus? Is that in any part of our flow control ordinance or in the case itself that was set?
I don't believe it is. The hauler records provision was pre-flow control. And I don't recall us referencing the records specifically in the ordinance itself.
Okay.
Except for what's contained here.
Okay. Ms. Linda?
My question is, either to Scott or Dustin, how do we receive, what is the data that we receive now? Do we receive the name and the containers, or what data flows to us on this report each month at this time?
We just exactly spelled out the name, location, container size, and frequency.
Okay.
And what we do with that information is we cross-reference the number of customers we have as utility customers. And the concept or the thought process, I guess I probably should have said that in the talk.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, what we do with that information is we cross-reference it with the number of water utility customers we have within the city limits. And that gives us a basis. We understand our customers fluctuate on a monthly basis on people having homes or whatever. It also is assuming that most of the time if somebody's living in a house, they have water and sewer, and they're going to generate trash. So those customer bases can be somewhat parallel. The other equation that comes in there is there's a large percentage of people in town that haul their own trash, that have a residence, but they choose to haul their own trash and drive it across the scale. We also track that tonnage that goes across the scale too. So being able to cross-reference the address and the location. Where the owner's information come in handy is we have a lot of people that have rental property. In fact, 66% of our 3,500 home inventory in the city of Rawlins is rental property. And so we have a lot of people that have rental properties, and that varies from some landlords or renters pay for the trash hauling services, some don't. And it kind of helps quantify the customer base and where things are going. Like I said, that's how the information is being used. It seems we've had a great track record of compliance from both haulers. We haven't had an issue of getting that information forthcoming to us, and that's how we've been utilizing it. So it's your pleasure on however you want to do that. It seems to be a good tool to checks and balances. I guess if there's a desire to change that or alter that, I would be open for suggestions on how you want us to regulate the flow control ordinance moving forward. And if you had suggestions for that, I think that ought to be a consideration to give us tools to work with. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Scott,
Yes.
Is it having their name, is that something that we have to have? I realize that we need to have a way to control the flow control. And by doing that, if we were just counting the containers, and they were reporting to you how many containers, it would
I think if you wanted to delete the names, I'd be fine with that. I think having the address, having the location is helpful to cross-reference what we have with utilities.
I guess
and then-
my thinking is, Scott, is that I want to do something that's going to affect flow control to make sure that we have some way to figure out how much tonnage is going out to the landfill. But I don't know if it's really necessary to have a person's name as to,
Sure.
I guess that's my thinking.
Just, the only thing that I've seen going through and cross-referencing that data is where the only thing that it really seems to help clarify when you're trying to get an actual picture of what's happening is, again, just the rental properties, the multi-owned properties. Some of them are in different people's names, some of them are, it just makes it a little bit clearer and without the redundancy of trying to go through and apply it. But if you want to leave the names off of it, that's fine. I don't know what the big deal is about that. From a proprietary standpoint, these records aren't shared for any, and
The
they
other
don't
thing
go
is I want to
anywhere.
make sure that in our ordinance, it says it has containers also, that.
Yes.
So we got to have that in there.
I mean, that's, and that theoretically is a maximum, I mean, it's all theoretically in its basis. It's like, is your container all the way full this week? No, it might have one bag in it this week, but the potential is, this is what could potentially be gathered up on a week if everybody had their garbage cans. Maybe on Christmas Day, it rings a little more true than any other time, but probably not. But, like I said, historically speaking, numbers before flow control, numbers now, we see things going well, no problem. So. Oh.
I have to go up there. It's just, we never turned in names, just the address and the number of containers, because we've been threatened by our customers to sue us.
You're
for
correct,
giving
Rose.
them.
I'm sorry, you're correct. Yeah, it's accurate. I'm sorry. When I put it in my database,
Right, it's, yeah, we don't give out.
I'm sorry, you're correct. I'm sorry.
So it eliminates that. Okay.
Well, but I would still argue they don't need an address. All we need is tonnage. You can verify all of this without an address. You don't need to know my address to know that if I have a residential can that's this size and it gets dumped 4 times, that is going to stay the same regardless of where my house is.
So you're not asking just for a name?
Well,
How's it reading there?
So currently what it reads is a list of customers, size of containers for that customer, and frequency of pickup. And I'm arguing that all that needs to be provided is the size of container and the frequency of pickup. I dumped 25 100 gallons and 10 5-gallons in this month. Given the scales, we'll tell you everything we need to. It's not the city's business what address that container is on.
Ms. Linda?
And no matter what we do, if we are getting the information by addresses, we still need to change that to a list of addresses, customer addresses or something, so it complies with what we're doing, number one. But I still feel in our systems, we need to have a way we check. And address by address against our water and sewer is how we do it.
But if the tonnage going over the scale doesn't change, the difference doesn't matter where the address is.
I guess
If you
hypothetically.
can't prove that there's a change, the address isn't going to help you at all. Because there's no way for you to select out that address.
I guess the only comparison, and like I said, I'm not saying this is the only way to do this. This is the parameters that we've been given to regulate this under the current ordinance. So what I'm saying is, as I started, we have X amount of customers, and we see fluctuations in our customers. If I just have a number of containers and size, and I can't cross-reference that to the number of customers, if I see a downturn if we pick up 1,000 water customers, do those people have trash containers? I'm assuming, but I can't verify that. I can't cross-reference it because I have no way to tie it to a geographical location.
And I don't think the city has any business to do that.
That's
I
your
think you
opinion.
need to cross-reference against.
Okay,
what we have.
and that's fine, that's your opinion. I'm just saying, don't ask me to verify how that's comparing to our numbers, because I can't do that. Because I'm missing one of the variables to quantify apples to apples. Now we're not even comparing the same. So, like I say, it's your ordinance. Change it however you want. Just don't ask staff to try to quantify it back, because I can't.
Well, the quantification will come every time they tip the scales, right?
We'll know how much they're hauling, but I won't know in relationship to how many customers we have. What am I comparing that to? I'm comparing it to a monthly basis without knowing X. And X is how many residential properties probably have water and sewer and probably have a trash can next to them of a various size container. That's all I'm saying. You're going to know month to month what you're getting at the scales. That's what you're going to know.
And I'm arguing, I think that's enough. I don't think the city needs an address to verify that. I think that your weights are going to tell you everything you need to know.
Okay.
Is my argument.
I'm not arguing with you either way. I'm just saying that's how we're quantifying it. The question was, how am I using the information that we're getting?
Right.
And I told you that's how we're using the information. If you want to change that, great.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
It doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying it's going to be harder to quantify the way we're currently doing it statistically.
Mr. Barr. And I guess my question again is, it's to you, Scott, is it, because you handle the flow control, your staff does, is by not having the name, is that going to affect the way we were?
And I'm sorry, Rose corrected me. My database, when I compare it, has a list of our customer names for water and sewer.
Okay.
And I just carry in the hauler information in a spreadsheet. It's in an Excel spreadsheet that this is here, this is the size of container that's there. So they're not providing us a name now. They're providing us an address and the size of the container and the frequency that it's picked up.
That's fine, it's just an address.
And it does help cross-reference, and it gives us an idea that, hey, you know what, we're down to, so here's the quantification of it, without the X. If we're down 500 water customers in the city, I would expect a lower trash volume. But that's how we quantify this back and forth. Yeah, we're down 500 customers. Yeah, guess what? They're down 500 customers. It's a correlation. But if you don't want that level of detail, to say, yeah, we're down customers and we saw less trash this month, maybe that's why we saw it. Doesn't give us a quantification of, yeah, they still got a lot of commercial customers. Where we're short is the residential customers, and commercial people are generating far more garbage than the residential personnel.
But I think the size of the container will tell you most of that.
It would, but I mean, like I said, it won't be as accurate as we have now, and it won't, like now, you can see the picture, and it makes sense. And all I'm saying is then we'll just know how many containers they're picking up, we'll know potential volume at the top, and we'll see what they're bringing across the scale. We won't have no way to quantify a relationship to population or anything else like that without address location, but whatever you guys want to do.
Any other questions? Clerk will open online voting.
Yes.
Online voting is closed. The motion fails with 3 yeas and 3 nays. Okay, the yeas are Councilman Durst, Espinoza, and Martinez. The nays are Vice Mayor Sanger, Councilman Smith, and Councilman Wells.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to new business. Approval of payroll.
I move to approve the September 1st, 2019 through September 14th, 2019 payroll register for $232,571.42.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? No discussion? Clerk will open online voting.
We're having technical difficulties.
Okay.
Am I the first? Sorry.
One.
Oh, me, sorry.
Councilman Wells.
And second?
Lewis.
Okay, we're good.
And didn't come up.
Yea or nay?
Yay, I'd say yay.
Online voting is closed. The motion carries with 6 yeas.
Give us just 1 second.
It's coming up. It's coming up.
Meeting.
Okay, run the meeting,
Move on to new business. Approval of accounts payable. Ms. Linda?
Yes, I move to approve the accounts payable register for the period of September 12, 2019 to September 26, 2019 in the amount of $453,802.82.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? We'll open online voting.
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 6 yeas.
Thank you. Moving on, bid award, fire department pickup truck. Chief?
Lieutenant Mayor Sanger, Council. The fire department advertised and received 7 bids for the purchase of a 2019 or newer pickup to replace the code enforcement officer vehicle. 5 of the bids came back with bid bonds addressed to City Hall. 2 of the bid proposals were hand-delivered directly to the fire department from local dealerships. The local dealerships did deliver these in time. However, it wasn't specifically as spelled out in the bid documents. I've had discussions with both dealerships, the local dealerships, and they concur that they do not care for the bid bond requirement, and that's why they haven't been participating in the proposal and the bid processes. Rob Morris from Dallin Motors has asked to address the council and try to explain why they don't care for that process. So if it's your pleasure, I'd like to let Rob address that standpoint to you.
Sure. You started in here? Yes.
Okay. First of all, we bid county vehicles all the time and almost always win the bids. We're not building a bridge or a building, or we're ordering a product from a manufacturer who then pays a company to trail or to put it on a train track, ship it to Denver, and puts it on a commercial carrier and hauls it up here. I can't control if a tornado picks it up somewhere in between and tosses it in Kansas, I can't control if a factory burns down and it's not delivered in a timely manner because of that. I think you even had an incident where a truck was stolen from an dealership. And I don't know if you went back and collected on your bond there, but it's kind of a waste of money. It's not like I said, we're not actually building the vehicle. We're kind of the middleman. We buy it from the manufacturer, have it shipped to us, and we sell it to you at a profit or not. And quite frankly, there's no profit in it for us, the way we bid them, because that's our money we're spending too. And we all know that on these kinds of things. So to incur that extra cost for no reason seems a little bit ridiculous to me, and I don't understand the reasoning behind it. Like I said, we can't control acts of nature, and my understanding is a lot of this, we have to do it in a timely manner. Well, again, if a factory burns down, we can't control that. When the one that I think is Lou Lascano's truck got stolen, did they go back and collect on the bond there? Because it wasn't delivered in a timely manner then. So I don't know if the bonds really do any good anyways. And I think we'll be super competitive almost any time on the bids. Like I said, on county bids, we get most of those. I'm not saying we win them all, but most of them we do. And sometimes things happen. Like I said, if a factory goes on strike, that could slow something down, but that's all beyond our control. So with or without a bond, that's still going to happen. And I don't know if so about that, but it's not something we can control. We want to deliver it in a timely manner, but the bond doesn't change it one way or the other. I don't think it changed it in that instance, and you can answer that better than I can. Did it change that one for Luscano getting here in time?
Not really. No.
So it's kind of a waste, and I'd like to see Speed spend money here, and we're going to, like I said, it's our money we're spending too. So we want to get it to you as affordably as possible. This last bit, I don't know if, I think we want it as far as the money, even though we didn't do it by your regulations, but it would save you money if you accepted it. So that's all I've got to say. Any questions for me?
Well, I understand where you're coming from, and I guess the thinking is, I always thought that that we were required by state to have a bond, and if we could remove that bond, that's fine with me, but it's my understanding the state tells us what we can do and what we
The
can't.
county must have different rules. I don't know about that. So.
I don't know that either. I don't know what the county rules are or why the difference.
I was going to say, I actually, when I got appointed to council, I checked into that exact question, and it is very specifically a state law spelled out. I would have, probably going to defer over here. I would think that for something like a factory burning down, that's got to be in extenuating circumstances. I think there's got to be
Force
some
major.
kind of language, right?
There is.
More than, oh, I guess I forgot to submit enter on the computer last week or something.
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem, Wyoming Statute 151113 specifically details when the cities and towns in the state of Wyoming have to go out for bid. And it specifically says under Section A, it sets a parameter of $35,000 or above for public improvement contracts, but it says except that a contract for the purchase of a lease of a new automobile or truck shall be advertised regardless of price, and if there is an automobile or truck trade-in, it shall be included. Then you drop down to subsection F, and it says, in advertising any bid, the forms of guarantee required under this section and approved by the city or joint powers board shall be specified. In addition, bidders shall be required to accompany each bid with a bid bond, or if the bid bond is under $150,000 or less, any form of bid guarantee approved by the state, town, or joint powers board equal to at least 5% of the total bid amount with sufficient surety payable to the city or town or joint powers board. The bid guarantee shall, it's not may, shall be forfeited as liquidated damages if the bidder, upon the letting of the contract to him, fails to enter into the contract within 30 days after it is presented to him for the purpose or fails to proceed with the performance of the contract. The bid guarantee shall be retained by the city, town, or joint powers board until the proper bond or other form of security satisfactory to the city to secure the performance of the contract. The last sentence in that indicates no bid may be considered unless accompanied by a bid guarantee in the required amount. Now, I did some research today as, thank you, Fire Chief Rutherford, for alerting me to this issue. I did some research in our office to determine what other bid guarantees the city has approved, and previous city managers have went to the council to obtain approval for other bid guarantees. Those include letters of credit, both irrevocable and non-revocable by a bank. Cashier's checks were accepted. Business checks, personal checks were accepted. And to my knowledge, I've heard a great deal of rumblings about this, but I have not received any contacts or requests for a specific bid guarantee approval. We would, of course, forward those to the city manager, and the city manager would then present them to you for approval. So
Maybe there's some room for negotiation.
So, we would love to have it. It's not like it's a moneymaker for us. Again, we're trying to save our own money. You know, it's so, if you can figure out a way to make it work, I'm curious to what it's cost us, though, and by us, I mean all of us here, over the last few years.
I would say this is across the state. Neither this council nor COG have the authority to change the state statute. It would require the state legislature to take this up. I'm not aware of any time that staff has presented something to WHAM to get it changed, and I'm not aware of any of the local automobile dealerships in the state of Wyoming presenting anything to the legislature, but they may have. You know, just coming off of the crux, the intent is for this process to be uniform, non-discriminatory. And while we give preference to local Wyoming companies, we have to treat all Wyoming companies the same, and we can't give preferential treatment to our local dealers. We have to treat everyone the same. So these bonds and letters of credit and cashier's checks that we approve for one would be applied to everyone. We do not make special rules for certain dealers. We just can't do that. We have to be non-discriminatory. With that said, we are open to any type of negotiation that the council would feel is a good guarantee in lieu of a bond, in lieu of a cashier's check. But we haven't been requested, or that suggestion has never been made to us, would this work, would that work? And for the most part, the bid bonds, if you talk to contractors as a whole, they appreciate having those bid bonds in place because it weeds out those contractors who don't have the history and the experience to get the rating, to get the bid bond. It's not just a matter of money, it's a matter of experience. And in this instance, it would just be a matter of a 5% bid bond or a cashier's check or any other form of guarantee that this governing body finds reasonable.
So a letter of credit from the bank, would that take the place of the bond? Could we do something like that, 5%?
And we have done that. We have done that in the past, yes.
Just a council approval.
The council approval would be, you can negotiate with the dealer.
So typically what
I don't know, I'm just throwing that out.
What the statute calls for is that you have to specify it. So when we let out the bid, we have to properly identify that these forms of guarantee are acceptable to our governing body. A bid bond, a cashier's check, those things. We have gone away from those other issues. We have strictly only seen, for the most part, either bid bonds or a personal check from that business. We no longer, and I guess I would defer to the clerk's office, but all the bids that I have opened, we don't see the irrevocable letters of credit or the cashier's checks. I think they're few and far between.
Ms. Linda.
I would like to know how much you do have to pay for a bond on let's say your bid would have been, what, $150 or?
I honestly couldn't answer that, and I'll tell you why. When I bid them to you, I bid them making not a dime. Not a dime. So $10 is too much. And I want to point out a couple of things here. I think a year and a half or 2 years ago, the police department bought a couple Ford police cars. Now, we didn't participate in that bid at all because it didn't make sense to us. Well, I know a few police officers, none of them are here now, but they were telling me, well, it takes 2 people to get it up there and 2 people to get it back. And so in addition to paying more than they would have paid if they bought it from us, or I believe they would have, I don't know because I didn't bid it. But then you take 2 people out of the schedule for a day to get it there. You probably buy them lunch when they're there. In fact, I know that happened, or I was told that it happened, there and back. So there's other things other than the bid that cost you money in the long run. And like I said, if you can find a simplified way where it doesn't cost us money to not make money, we'd like to have our name on the back of stuff that you buy just because we like the pride in that, but also it's our money that's getting spent. We want to minimize that as much as possible. My tax dollars are just like yours. They mean a lot to me, and I want you to spend them wisely. And again, I don't see how the bond really helps you out. And again, if it can't be overcome, it can't be overcome, but if there's a way around it, let's find it and save everybody money. I think everybody's best interest.
So, Amy, other than the cost of the bond itself, we can take any other form? Or we can choose to take any other form?
Yes, you
Is
have.
that part of our bidding process? Does it say in our bidding process anything like that?
So the bid itself references specifically what's contained. A 5% bid bond or sufficient surety, but it does not spell out. When we let out a bid, we do not spell out a cashier's check, a personal check, a business check. Now, we can do that. We can add that, but just for background information, our advertisements to the public, to the Daily Times are being cut for words. So it's one of those things that we'll be happy to add it, but on the other hand, you need to be aware that we are going to expand the public notice requirements. So
I'm not sure that there's a differential. I'm reading this down here, and the differential in the top cost and the bottom cost is $12,000. I'm sure that 5 words do not cost $12,000. So I'm just saying, in
I
that.
would love to have my public notices not cut. So
Yeah, I'm just saying that's,
if I could get that in writing.
you're saving that money right there in just that one aspect. Is this something we need to debate for a little bit longer period of time?
Not this evening, but I
Not
think we
this
need to
No,
look
I
at
think
it.
it's something that we need to come back to and address, and see if
Okay.
we can come up with.
So, because we do not have a bid bond on this particular bid, we cannot accept this bid as of right now. Is that correct?
That's correct, because there was nothing, you can waive the informality of him not taking it to the clerk's office or having it mailed to City Hall. Your bids give you that authority to command, or, to waive any formality. But unfortunately, the Wyoming statute clearly states no bid may be considered unless accompanied by a bid guarantee in the required amount.
It's a bid guarantee, but it is a requirement
It is a
by
requirement.
state statute.
So, but based upon the information, the council has options tonight. The council can reject all bids. The matter can be let out again, and then, or give staff time to work with the local dealers, and this would apply to all dealers, all forms of guarantee that is acceptable to the council. Once you determine what those forms are, they'll be advertised, everyone will be put on notice that these are the bid guarantees that are acceptable, and then you can have another bid opening and you can proceed.
Okay, Scott, you look like you have a comment here.
I guess I just got a question, because this isn't the first time we've got this.
No, continue. Oh, thanks. I guess, it's always, I've always had a hard time grasping this, and like I said, I understand, like most legislation, it was probably enacted because a mayor somewhere in some city probably had a car dealership, was selling cars to a city and nobody else got to bid one, so it's kind of ironic that the state statute would clearly specify 35,000 and vehicles. And I guess the thing that I've always had a hard time struggling with is you just don't become a Chrysler dealer or a Chevrolet dealer or a Ford dealer without, it's a franchise company, and there's a lot of money that's put up to become a dealer of that sort. So there's a lot of personal investment by a car dealership owner. And if the inventory they have sitting on that lot of 50 cars isn't trustworthy enough for us to go down and buy a car as a guarantee that we're going to deliver a vehicle, I don't know what would be. I mean, I've struggled with this ever since. I mean, I would love to see every vehicle that was bought in the city of Rawlins have a local dealership's name tag on the back of it. That hasn't happened for years. And I mean, if it's as simple as getting a letter of credit, I'm glad that this was brought up tonight, because I think we can do that. But I just have to wonder, you know, by the mere existence of that dealership in this town, there's a large amount of money that's sitting there on that lot in inventory that person's responsible for, that's guaranteed somebody, the Chrysler Corporation, GM Motors, or whatever, that they're going to sell those products and deliver those products to customers. And to me alone, I mean, it just seems like, and maybe that's a question we take to our legislators this fall, it's like, by the pure meaning of having a franchise dealership, I think that that's a guarantee enough for me. Now, it's totally different when we're buying $1 million fire truck, a $600,000 loader that's going to be built, and we want to make sure that that company's going to still be in business, so we get that loader or we get that fire truck, because those things happen on a daily basis. But get a pickup, I'm sure if we couldn't get the one that we wanted or was ordered, maybe they, through their dealer trade network, could get us a pickup and provide it to us. So it just seems cumbersome to me, but that's just my comment.
Ms. Linda?
I want to support our local dealers, and I've always felt that this has been an issue. But if the state statute says shall, and we do have leniency of accepting like a cashier's check that's returnable after we get, and bid bonds you pay, well, that would, $25,000 would cost them $1,250, which they don't get back. But if we would do a cashier's check that's returnable to them, then I think that would give them a more fair playing field, and we can look at something like that if it would meet the state statutes.
And we have done that. We have accepted cashier's checks, and we have accepted business checks as well. And sometimes the checks weren't even cashed during that holding period. We've since stopped that because the checks might go stale.
Mr. Barry?
All I want to say is I concur with what Scott said. I think that as long as I've been on the council, that's always been a question. Numerous calls and say, well, why can't you buy the vehicles in town here while you're going out of town? And so it's always been a problem, and I've always asked the question, and the reply was, well, it's state statute and you can't do it, so we'd let it ride. This is the most information that we've got tonight that I ever have, and I think it's important that we work with the dealers here in town if we can, and see if we can't purchase some of the vehicles that we need. So I support that.
I ask you all a question. Does anybody know the numbers we're talking about on this one deal? Any idea? Have y'all seen the bids?
Yeah.
They're right here.
They're right in front of us.
So, you know what our bid was, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
What was the next closest to us?
35, it's $10,000.
How much?
10,000.
$10,915. So, that's your money too.
Ms. Linda?
I have a legal question, really. If we rebid these, everybody knows what they've got to bid out there, so how's that fair if they rebid them? But I don't think we can waive not having a bid tonight and take local.
Correct. So a competitive bid process in the state of Wyoming is the best for everyone. With the more bids you receive, that price gets driven down. With the price being driven down, the city pays less. It is a win-win. So I don't want the impression out there that the city of Rawlins is not supportive of a competitive bid process. To the contrary, the city staff go out of their way to send our bids anywhere we possibly can just to garner some competition. Unfortunately, we are in a situation where there's a plain language statute that identifies all new trucks and cars, automobiles, will be bid. It specifically says all bids will include this 5%. This is not the city council making this regulation. This was not your rule of law. This came from the state statutes, and it's specific to cities and towns. I couldn't tell you what the county's provisions are, but I can tell you unequivocally this is what cities and towns have to comply with. I have reached out to WELGA, which is our local government attorneys group, just to make sure I wasn't missing something that maybe another municipality was doing. The only caveat that they have out there is they follow the bid process, but they also have staff look at the state bid pricing. And if they can get it cheaper through the state bid processing, they will, the Wyoming Department of Transportation allows them to piggyback on that. But it doesn't circumvent them from doing the bid process. This is something that I think has been going on since before my time. It will be going on long after I'm gone. Again, it's not a City of Rawlins requirement. It is simply what has been placed on us by the Wyoming state staff, and we don't have that authority. You don't want to get into a position where we're actively voicing, let's violate this state statute.
So in the piggyback process, does it then require a bond?
That I don't know. That I don't know.
No? They can use any form of surety?
Yeah, well, the way it used to work up until a few years back, we would buy vehicles off the state bond, or state bid.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't putting a bond, they weren't requiring a bond. It was like, hey, this, because it's went through a bid process on the state level, primarily for police cars. A lot of jurisdictions, here's a spec for a police car. Highway Patrol buys more police cars probably than anybody, and they would put out a state bid, and then that way anybody, Fremont County, Natrona County, City of Cheyenne, City of Laramie, could buy a vehicle off of that state bid price from a local dealer if they were part of the state bid process. And to my recollection, when we used to do that, there was no bond process because it was going off the state bid. Since then, we have the determination was we couldn't participate in the state bid process because it was neglecting the bonding process. And we got into that issue over a fire truck. When I was the fire chief, asked for clarification because the same time the city and the county, we were bidding the exact same fire truck. The county moved faster on getting the bid specs out because of the bonding issue. They went through the bid process, and it turned out we wanted to buy these trucks from Canada and buy 2 of them and share the cost of the county and city, but because of the bonding process, we couldn't accept that as another municipal government bid because they didn't bond it, and so we had to advertise our own. Consequently, we had to make another trip to Canada 8 months later. So there's a lot of people that participate off the state bid. We've chosen not to because of the bonding requirement, because when they bid that out, I don't know who's collecting the bond, who they're paying it to. We've worked it out with the dealerships, hey, will you honor this state surplus bid process for police cruisers or whatever. So I definitely think that if there's room to work with our local dealers, we need to, and that would extend out obviously statewide. Everybody, if they want to provide us a letter of credit or whatever, we'd surely accept that. Whatever would make this process easier.
Troy?
I was just going to piggyback on what Scott said, is that in the past, prior to a few years ago, all we had to do was send a letter to YDOT, and they would support us to piggyback on their bids. And I also did about the city of Casper a few years ago, and that's when this all kind of really started. I had to get a letter of support from them that we could piggyback on their bid, and that they allowed us to, but then it was shut down here. We had to go out for bid after that. So I was piggybacking on. That's how we used to do that.
Ms. Linda?
I have a motion, I think, and bear with me. I move that we reject all bids due to the fact that the lowest bid does not have the 5% bond required, and that we rebid with the proviso that we could have the bid say either a bond as required by statute or a certified check.
Letter of credit.
Letter of credit.
A letter of credit may be prohibitive because during that time, that the lending institution has to ensure that money is available. So it might tie their hands, but absolutely, a letter of credit, we can add a letter of credit. But it might be prohibitive on the dealer side.
I would like to keep it really clean, and that way you can give back the check when it's.
I guess my question would be to be in compliance with the state statute, you have to agree to some monetary thing, at least 5%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would that be that the council would be able to say that you have an inventory of at least $25,000 for this vehicle? I mean, there's some surety there.
Under the secured transactions, you would have to have UCC filings and a security interest.
Let me rephrase my question then. What are we out? Because our purchasing policy clearly says that we do not pay for a vehicle until it shows up at our front doorstep. We don't write a check to Down Motors for $25,000 today, and they give us a bid bond of 5%. There is not a dime of city money that's expended until that vehicle shows up. So that's why I question the whole guarantee of a bid bond. We're not out a dime. We're out some time in the process of waiting for them to deliver us a vehicle, but we are out no money, and there are no monies at risk.
I think the only problem you would run into is you have a state statute.
Yeah,
we
I
have to
agree.
meet that. We can change it with them by discussing that with them,
Right.
with the state itself. I'm not sure that we can circumvent it until we've figured out a different way to do this process. Because you're correct. I mean, what do you got? $4 or $5 million sitting on a lot, right? It's not like you don't have.
3.8 right now, but yeah.
Right. So that wasn't not very close.
Really close.
But in terms of that, a lot of companies use their inventory as their security
Sure.
to buy new equipment, buy new property, to do a lot of that work. We're not being afforded that opportunity in this particular statute, and that's something to be discussed with the state. But at this particular juncture, we need to, first of all, move this along.
Sure.
And figure out a different way of doing this. Because right now, they're requiring a bond of money he does not get back, or any local, or any of them get back. It doesn't matter if it's our local people or any local people. They're not getting their money back.
I guess with all due respect, and I would, instead of tying some language that we may have to undo later, would it be just cleaner if it's the direction of the council to reject the bids, just to simply reject the bids, and then allow us as staff and the attorney some time to evaluate what that bid process would look like to meet the full intent of the state statute, because we don't want to circumvent that by any means, but to have the correct language to come back at a later date with you, or to get that correct language in our next bid advertisement. I just hate to have us tail on some language tonight that may or may not comply
I'll
with the
withdraw my
intent of the
motion,
statute.
and I move to reject all bids.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, would you open online voting, please?
Just a second.
Just to reject all bids.
And clarification, we do return the bid bond money. I heard that money's lost.
I thought they had a bond, they pay like a bond, but they don't return.
If
the money.
They buy a bond.
If they send us a check, but if they send us a check, typically speaking of the 5%, if they are if they're not the winning bidder, we return all those other checks back to the non-winning bidder, and then we hold
the check from the winning bidder until the time it gets delivered. I just wanted to clarify, I thought I heard that we didn't return the money. So, but yeah, we do return the money to the people that, if we'd awarded the bid to company X tonight, all the other ones, we would have sent the checks back.
But they would have purchased the bond at that point, and the bond, that's a cost for them to purchase a bond.
Oh, absolutely. That's
Right,
not a
and
bond.
that money they don't get back.
So what
Is that correct?
It comes off the price of the vehicle, I believe.
No.
Can I say something real quick?
They lose that?
No, they pay the amount that the bid is.
Right.
If we buy the purchase, we purchase the car, and when we purchase the
We give
car,
them the bond.
we give them bonds back, and we send out back all the money.
All the money goes back, eventually.
First thing, money for the bond you don't get back, okay? So that, what I was gonna say, if we can send a check to guarantee it, and if we get the bid, cash a check, and I wouldn't have a problem, but I don't own the dealership, but I can tell you right now, I can make that happen. We could do that, and then you can refund us once we deliver the vehicle to you. But if I buy a bond, if I don't get the bid, I've still spent the bond money to make, again, I'm bidding something to not make a profit, to do something for our community, So we're bidding something to not make a profit for our community and spending money needlessly. So if there's a way to do it and save that, we save us all money. $10,000 on one purchase is a big deal.
So I think what we're asking is if you'll spend some time with Amy to review some of the options, what would be best for you as a business and acceptable, and then we can go forward
I
with
can't
those.
say for sure would be best, but her idea of a check, I'm fine with that. Like I said, my biggest deal is the bond, and it didn't say that in the bid that I read. It said a bond or,
Other security.
yes. So, but if there's a way around that and it doesn't cost us money to do it,
Win-win.
all for it. All for it.
There we go.
We all save money.
I'd like to direct staff, Amy and Scott, to work together on that issue and come back to us what we think would be best. My preference is a certified check bond. I don't care for personal checks because I've seen them bounce. And I don't know about any letters of credit because of the UCC thing, but if you'll get back to us on that, would be great.
Come up with some options.
Love that.
Ready.
Thanks for hearing me.
Solve the world's problems.
Appreciate it.
I'll take your discussion. Thank you, Council.
Brady.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
We need to know.
Good, Mayor.
Thank you.
The outcome of the vote.
Okay, online voting is closed, and the motion carries with 6 yeas.
Thank you. Moving on to the next thing, the demolition of 822 West Pine Street. Ms. Danielle.
Yeah, I was getting worried we didn't get to see her
Oh,
tonight.
no, never. Honorable Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, I am coming to you guys with a bid for the demolition of 822 West Pine. I guess I want to give you guys a little bit of background. So this building has been a dangerous building for quite some time now, before I was even employed with the city, which is coming up on 7 years. So it was previously owned by a gentleman that owns a couple of properties here, and he had given it to the city. And the fire department used it for some training. And then we did go in as the city and we removed the asbestos from this building. And what we bid out, if you've been to that property, there's kind of 2 levels to it. There's the house on the top side of it. And then kind of the back side, there's some old motel rooms, and there's a lot of concrete in there. And what we're wanting to do is demo that bottom part. So we would leave the house at the top, the back part of the property with, I think it's 4 rooms total, and then all of that concrete would be removed. We did receive only 1 bid from Wyoming Recycling, or Recycled Materials, sorry, out of Casper for $9,981.50. After they removed all of that stuff, they would level that. If we need fill dirt, we'll kind of have to evaluate that as they start doing it. They'll put that in there, and it'll just be a dirt area back there behind the house. I also want to make sure that you guys know that this bid would be the demolition and that the city would cover the landfill fees. The reason we did that is we thought, or it's our belief, that if we aren't paying the contractor, they're not going to charge us more to cover that cost. Both of these, the $9,900 and the landfill fees, would be paid with our dangerous building fund. And the building official and I looked at that property, and he's guessing that the landfill fees on that will be anywhere from probably $10,000 to $15,000. After, if we award this bid, we would close that dangerous property out, and then we would work with legal to sell that property so that it's no longer a city property that we need to maintain. If you guys have questions for me, I will try to answer them.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, we wanted to try a different approach this time with selling a property. And when we went and evaluated the front part, which was kind of an office, it was a house at one time, then it was converted into an office for the motel. We looked at the condition of that and thought, maybe let's try it with something more attractive. At least somebody could purchase the property, maybe come in and renovate that and make it a livable house. Before, we've seen where we've demoed these properties and then the property just sits because the cost of doing anything with it is prohibitive to what's already owed on it. So part of it was a cost control measure. The other part of it was maybe it'd be more attractive when we sell it to list the property for sale. So that was kind of the thought process with this one. Try something a little bit different and see if we get a different result instead of doing the same thing and expecting a result that's different and not getting it. So we just wanted to try something different with this property, and this one looks like a good candidate to possibly do that with. And so, thank you.
I do have a question. Do we have an approximate value of that property, if it's clear?
No, we don't.
I do not know. And I think that's something after we clear it, typically, and Amy can answer this better than me, I think she talks to realtors and gets like the fair market value and all that stuff, but that's probably something that'll have to be done after we get that removed.
And this one will be different because there's a structure left.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, when we have a vacant land, then we either have a land appraiser on the vacant land. With this one having a structure, we can actually maybe get a fair market value and put it out to bid with realtors and then make that choice later once it comes for sale.
Ms. Linda?
I move to award the demolition of 822 West Pine bid to recycled materials, the amount of $9,981.50. Landfill fees will be paid by the city from the dangerous building fund.
Ms. Wells? Moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
So I just a quick question. I'm sure off the top of my head, I'm not picturing where this is. I'll probably drive past.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Loaf Jug? You know where
Okay,
Loaf Jug
okay.
is? If you go down the block towards, what is?
South, just go 9th Street.
Right on 9th.
One block south.
It's right there on the left.
It's the old
Okay,
building west of
okay.
the-
So this is going to remove the dangerous part of this property and leave a house on there? Is that correct? Like a?
Correct.
Yeah, leave the structure.
Yeah,
There's a
office
L-
house.
There's an L shape that was an apartment complex in the back, or not apartments, excuse me, hotels. And so it's an L-shaped building in the back that'll be tore down, and that parking lot will be the retaining wall.
And then that would make it a usable property again
Yes.
instead of a dangerous property.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, and that's after we get that finished and we have a passing final inspection with the demolition, then we will work with our building official he'll still look at all that, he'll work through the process, and then we'll close that dangerous property out.
Perfect.
So whoever purchases it won't have to go through that hassle either of working a settlement agreement and
It'll
jumping
just
through all those
be
hoops.
move-in ready, so to speak.
Not really. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, depending what you want to live in, but yeah.
Well,
It'll be more attractive.
but yeah, it doesn't require a whole slew of cleanup.
Yes.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. Clerk will open online voting.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 6 yeas.
We're moving on to fire department pumper. Chief?
Mayor Pro Tem Council. The fire department let out bid opening and bid invitations on June 28, 2019. Two bids were received, one from Front Range Apparatus and the other from Ken Garf West Valley Chrysler Jeep Dodge. Neither of the bids met the required specifications entirely. And to make a long story short, we specified too tightly. We created a problem for the manufacturers because our specifications were so strict that it created too long of an apparatus, and it was not going to fit our needs, and I take that responsibility. So what I'm asking the council to do is reject all bids, and we'd like to redo our specifications and go back out to bid, and we'll get the apparatus that we want. We don't buy fire trucks very often. They're very expensive, and we want to make sure that we do this right, and we didn't do this right.
I move to reject all bids for the fire department pumper and rebid.
Ms. Lynn? Been moved and seconded. Clerk will open online voting.
Online voting is closed and the motion carries with 6 yeas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no other questions or anything else for this evening. Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
So much for 7 o'clock. Great discussion, though.
I thought it was a good meeting.
That was a really good discussion.
So you should never guess how long it's going to take.
Pardon?
You should never guess how long it's going to take.
Oh, yeah.
That's the moral of the story.
My wife, yeah, it'll be over 11. That's what she kept telling me. It'll be over 11.
Lucky we ain't having really good.
No kidding, huh? Oh, we didn't. That's okay. The bonfire thing. We forgot, yeah.
Oh, you forgot it.
Well, it sounds to me like you have authority to do it on your own, and I would say you have council.
It's a consensus that you can do it.
Can we just throw back into it?
No. We're good. We can let it go. We have the authority to do it.
Because, yeah, you have consensus.
Yeah. Just don't burn anything.
Should we just formally?
Do your job, John.
Yeah.
Have Marlon move that.
Put it in here.
Yeah, we just forgot to do it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't on our.
Yeah, she did.
I didn't see it on.
I did. Where's it on here?
You need to fix it, John.
Yeah, but you.
Drugs, sex, and rock and roll.
You are physically repulsive.
On top of everything else, I think I'm getting my period.
1 out of 3 ain't bad.